I felt like in a fishbowl, like eyeballs. Everybody was inspecting every move that I made. At the time, I felt it was easier to uphold the performance than it was to unpack my own crap and deal with it. My grief felt like a Pandora's box. I felt like if I opened that box, I would never get up off the floor. That I would probably perish there just from the level of pain of all kinds that I was feeling. And every time I looked at my kids, I was like, I don't have that option.
Imagine being in so much pain that you feel you don't have the space or even the option to process it. And then, on top of that grief, come the expectations of others, telling you how you should mourn the person you've just lost. Welcome to episode 18 of the X Perspective podcast. I'm your host, Raj. Cindy Rodriguez Constable grew up on Long Island, New York, rooted in Puerto Rican values. In 1999, at age 26, she moved to her husband Kevin Kelly's hometown of Bushnell, Florida, a community of just 2,000 people. Together, they built a life in this small, tight-knit town where she was welcomed with open arms. But after 17 years together and raising their daughters, Cindy and Kevin eventually decided to separate, though they did remain married. During a very intense period in her life, after the death of a loved one, Cindy came face to face with the weight of others' expectations. That experience ultimately led her to unravel a key insight about herself and to establish the boundaries she'd been needing for so long. Come with me and let's meet Cindy. She's 53 years old now, and her story is one worth hearing. After living in this community for 20 years, in 2017, you told me your world turned upside down. Can you describe to my listeners what happened to your husband at the age of 42?
Well, long story short, he passed away suddenly. He went into liver failure. So we went to the emergency room. He was admitted to the hospital. And a week later, he passed away. It was quite tragic. He was in the hospital a couple days, had cardiac arrest. Then he went into a coma. He never woke up from the cardiac arrest. So we were admitted on Friday. On Sunday morning, Saturday night into Sunday morning, he had cardiac arrest. They were able to revive him, but he never regained consciousness. And so neuro and all the folks, did all the things. And on Monday, they were like, well, he's young. Let's give it a second. On Wednesday, they were like, there's still no brain activity. Nothing is happening. Nothing has changed. And so they asked me what I wanted to do. And we had talked about it before. It was like, nobody's hanging out in this state. We're not going to do that to each other. We're just going to, disconnect and move on. And so I told his parents, or his mom and his brothers, what I intended to do. And they were like, totally your decision. We support whatever decision you make. I even said, if you guys want to talk to the doctors and make sure I'm not just in a fog and a haze. And everyone concurred. And we removed the intubation and all that on Friday, and he passed.
Was there any sign that he was going to have this attack, or was it unexpected?
He suffered from a condition called hereditary hemochromatosis, which is an iron loading disease, particularly ferrin overloads in your blood, and he'd had that for a couple of years. Sadly, he was not a cooperative patient with the protocols and the treatments that he needed to do. And he was also a bit of an alcoholic. So those things together made for a very, very bad recipe. And about 3 weeks prior, we had gone in for some blood work and meet with the doctor at my insistence because I was absolutely having a fit because I'm like, ugh, you've got to do something. Because I could see him getting sicker and sicker. You could see the yellowing of the eyes, the whole thing. I'm like, your liver's shutting it, we have to go. And the doctor said, if you don't do something different, I'm going to give you 3 weeks. It was 2 weeks later and he passed.
And how did you feel at that time?
Gosh, I felt a lot. Angry, sad, devastated, guilty. Maybe I didn't do enough. I should have forced him more. I should have done something, anything differently. At the time we had been separated for about a year and a half because he was refusing to care for himself and he was drinking to cover how sad he was. And these were a bad combination. So it was just like, ugh, I can't. But I did do a lot of like beating myself up. I think like maybe I could have done something different. I should have just, so there was like a war of emotions. And, we were best friends. Like our divorce that didn't actually happen because he passed was the nicest divorce you've ever seen in your life. No lawyers, no custody battle. We just filed papers ourselves. We hadn't even had a court date yet. We still had joint accounts. We handled everything normal. He saw the kids at his leisure, which was pretty much daily. Like, so we were really, truly such good friends. Like, so it was not an animosity like type of situation, but it was still, it's like I lost my best friend. I lost the father of my kids, who was a great dad. I think I felt every emotion under the sun all at one time.
I can imagine. And just for my listeners, Cindy has mentioned that at the time of Kevin's passing, he was legally still your husband, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You guys were, though, separated for over a year at that time. Can you describe, and you've touched on this a little bit, what kind of a relationship did you have with your husband at the time when he passed, when you were separated?
We were still great friends. We talked regularly. Our youngest was in high school, so she was 15. Our oldest was already out of the house, had her own place and everything. She was engaged, getting ready to be married. In fact, the wedding was 6 weeks post his death. Different problem. So we got along great. So there was not like an issue between us that way, other than we decided we didn't want to be like husband and wife anymore. So people in our town, if you will, didn't realize that we were separated because they would see us together at, our kids' games at the high school, small school, same high school he went to, same gym teacher, still the whole thing, right? So everybody knew him. So I would show up, rolling in sideways from work. And because I worked an hour away, and the front desk would be like, hey, Kevin's already paid for your ticket and your snacks are waiting at the thing. You can just grab them and go. And that maintained throughout our separation because we were friends. We generally enjoyed each other as humans. And he was like super dad. So there's just no issue in that regard. So people were really, really confused that we weren't together when they realized it kind of post his death. Now, obviously, his close friends knew. There was, a tight circle who knew, but we didn't like post it on Facebook or advertise or anything like that.
You didn't feel like it was necessary?
No, because it was very amicable and we were still going to co-parent our kids and live happily ever after.
Cindy, considering you were still married to Kevin, despite being separated, what expectations did family and friends hold of you when your husband died?
Whew. Wow. The weight of expectations is heavy indeed on the person being expected who doesn't know that they were being expected to do things. So everyone had their idea of how I was supposed to feel. And for me, I didn't know how I was supposed to feel. I didn't know what my own role was, right? Am I a grieving widow? Am I grieving almost ex-wife? Am I grieving best friend? Like, what am I doing? Like, there was a war of emotions for me, and my kids are suffering with the loss, right? So I'm just like, I need to worry about them first. I'll deal with you guys later. But some people were like, how dare you, move on? Because I did, in their mind, I started dating a couple months after Kevin died. But for me, at that point, it had been almost 2 years since I had been with my husband. So those who don't have enough information had a lot of expectation on what I should or should not be doing. Now, his family was supportive in that I made all the decisions for his medical care. I put together the funeral. I gave the eulogy. I did all of the things. And alone, like his family didn't show up for the extubation. No one was in the room when my husband died, but me and my children, who were puddles on the floor. There was like, you guys have a lot to say, but no one is stepping up to do any of the helping.
So what kind of expectations did they have for you?
Basically that I would just be, I guess, this grieving, mourning puddle of a mess. And, I'm like, one, you don't know me. That's not even how I operate. Like, I am Supergirl in a crisis. So I do my compartmentalization and I'll mourn quietly in the corner with a therapist, not out loud. Like, I'm not going to bleed on people who didn't cut me. It's just not my way.
Can you give us a specific example of what they expected, like how they expected you to mourn?
Basically, it was, I wasn't sad enough. And we were, he passed. The next day was a massive hurricane, so I didn't have access to my home for 10 days because it flooded all the things. I stayed with my daughter's in-laws. We couldn't plan the funeral because there was no power in the entire county. This was the year that we had a hurricane that ran straight up through the entire state of Florida. So I don't know, half the counties in Florida had no power. So the body was stored in some other county. It was a total mess. So by the time we were able to do the funeral, no one stepped up. Nobody came with me to the coroner to plan anything, to do anything. But they had expectations of how it should go. And I was like, well, if you had input, family members, you weren't present when we planned the funeral. If you had input, friends, you don't get input because this wasn't your thing to think of. Now, I will say some of his high school friends came to me, and Lori in particular, she asked to plan the luncheon kind of afterwards. And I was like, God bless you. Thank you. Because I didn't have the bandwidth to even do it. So that was good. But the expectation was I guess I needed to grieve longer. Some people said, oh, shouldn't you wait 2 years post the death of your husband to whatever? And I was like, where did you get the rule book from?
I want to get into how did that make you feel? I'm sensing there's still anger there, just the way you're talking. But how, if you can remember, at that time, people are coming up to you and telling you to be more sad. And I'm getting the sense you were so busy because you had to deal with everything that was happening. How did it make you feel?
At the time, it made me feel, I think that made me feel sad because I was like, you don't know the weight that I am carrying. And you are externally from a place outside our inner circle. So you're so far removed from the process, you don't know how sad I am. You don't know what moving in sadness looks like for me. You know what moving in sadness looks like for you. And maybe for you, that looks like shutting down, curling into a fetus, and just crying. This is not an option I felt I had. I had children. So I needed to lean into my anger, I think, so that I could keep pressing forward and I had to go to work, all of the things. There was no downtime. I was suddenly a single parent, and I lived an hour away. My husband was the one who drove our daughter to work and picked her up from practice every day. That was now gone instantaneously. So I'm trying to figure out logistics for my child, figure out logistics for our home, his salary is now gone. Everything just upended. And the thought for me that someone expected me to just curl up and cry, I was like, how ridiculous is that? So I couldn't see that.
At that point, Cindy, what could people have done for you that would have made it easier for you to get through this time? What expectations did you have from them, if any?
I really didn't have any of anyone. People who stepped up just did, like his friend Lori, who planned the thing after the funeral. She didn't say, what do you need? She just came in and said, hey, do you mind if we plan the luncheon? I didn't even know that I needed help doing that because I was so marred in my own grief, my own sadness, my own anger, trying to navigate my youngest in particular. She was a puddle on the floor. So trying to figure out how I got her going. And I really didn't know what to ask of someone else at that time because I was so overwhelmed with emotion. And so it was if somebody offered something, great. My daughter's, she was getting married. The bridal shower was scheduled for September 23rd or the 25th. It was a couple days after the funeral.
Oh, a couple days after the funeral.
The funeral was September 20th. And so I think it was the 23rd was her bridal shower. And her maid of honor, which has been her childhood best friend, was like, hey, I can take it from here if you want, because there was still a lot to be done. We were having a Kentucky Derby themed tea party thing. And so I just handed her my credit card and I said, go to town, Ivy, whatever It doesn't matter. Just put it on there and we'll work it out later. And she did. Her and the bridesmaids literally planned the entire thing, and I just showed up. And I didn't know what a relief that would be, but it was a relief. And so it was for me, it was kind of the people who just kind of observed and said, oh, here's a problem that I can help with, instead of additionally burdening me with what else do I need done. So I think that's my expectation, was really nothing of anyone, because I didn't know what I needed. And so when people just did things, it was like, oh,
A relief.
thank you. Yes, it was a huge relief.
Now, let's talk about the community. What kind of expectations did your community have after the death of your husband from you? And why do you think they held those expectations? I'm talking about the people beyond your friends and family.
I think Kevin was beloved. I will say he was beloved in the community. You know, they put up a sign at the local sports complex for him because he had coached girls softball for ever and ever. So he was definitely beloved. The funeral was attended by the sheriff and the police chief and the same. Like, he was a beloved member of the community. So I think everyone's grief was just kind of placed on me to express for them, if that makes sense.
That's really heavy.
And it is, because everyone grieves. Grief is such a personal journey. And my own was one of, I would say, denial in the beginning, because I just had to keep getting through. I had to keep doing all the things I needed to do to keep everything afloat and keep everything moving. And it wasn't until much later, maybe a year or more later, that I contended with my own loss and my own grief. So I think it was the expectation of me expressing their grief in the way that they thought I should express it.
Cindy, I'd like to ask you the next question. You grew up with both American and Puerto Rican values.
Yes.
And your husband was Irish and Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think cultural differences played a role in creating any of these expectations that were coming from his family members and friends?
I think somewhat. In the Hispanic culture and the Puerto Rican culture, family is very tight knit, right? Like we kind of joke, we move in packs. Everybody's there. Your tia, your grandma, your cousins, like everybody, and we're very touchy-feely, huggy, and a lot of times you care for ailing family members at home if you can. And if they are hospitalized or in hospice or something, like, everybody's there all the time. Everybody's tending to everything. And so for me, I think I was taken aback by his family, like, not coming to the hospital to say goodbye. Like, I couldn't, like, my brain really couldn't process that. Because I was like, if this was my child, you'd have to pry me out of here with a crowbar. Like, I would be cascaded over their dead body and you would have to physically remove me. And you guys didn't come because, it's too much.
So you did have certain expectations of them.
Yeah. I just thought, what else would you do? Your brother is going to die on this day. Like, the doctors have scheduled it. So everybody who says, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Well, you had a chance to say goodbye and you didn't say goodbye. And I was the one 24/7 camped out bedside for the week. Not them. Or sometimes they'd come, or like his mom, she would stay in the lobby downstairs. I can't really see him like that. And my brain, like, literally was breaking, because I was like, well, I can't see him like that either, but somebody has, because my thought was, if I wasn't willing to suck it up, who was? Because his mom and his brothers couldn't, in their words, they couldn't see him that way. Well, then who was going to do it?
You felt like you had to be strong and be there for him.
For him. And, like, why wouldn't I? He was my best friend. Like, I still love him. I will always love him. Sorry. And I couldn't imagine for anyone to not be there. And I think maybe culturally that's a difference, that you can separate yourself. There's just not. And maybe it's just my upbringing. I couldn't possibly separate myself. All of my family members who I personally knew who died, I was there. Like, I sat bedside for my grandmother, for my grandfather, for my other grandfather, for my aunt, for my uncle, like, curled up in the bed holding them until they passed. Like, so my brain couldn't conceive of any other way at the time. So I think that's why when the expectations showed up post, it was like, for me, it was almost like a how dare you.
I can only imagine what you went through and how much stress you went through and how you had a lot of mental stress. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. But I want to get into internal expectations. How were the expectations you placed on yourself as a wife after his death different from the expectations his family and friends had on you? And I know you've touched on that, but if you can go a little bit deeper, can you explain to the audience what kind of expectations, aside from being strong and getting things done, was there anything else you had set for yourself?
I think for me, it was the desire to keep his memory alive. So by that, I mean talking about him, sharing his stories. Like, I didn't want him to become this hush-hush topic that, made everybody sad when we brought him up, because he was a very jovial guy. And so he was a prankster, and he was like super supportive. So I didn't want it to be like we only talked about his death or his failings at the end, his inability to get himself together so that this didn't happen. I wanted to remember all of the good things. And so like I made a point of talking about those things and raising him up and ensuring that my kids could talk about their dad as much or as little as they wanted to. I didn't want it to ever become a taboo. And again, I wanted it to be from an uplifting place because it's hard enough. But his family only wanted to revisit the death. And so it became really, like, I would go visit his mom. I still go visit his mom. She was my mother for 20 years. She was a lovely woman until her son died. And as awful as it is that the disconnect for me as a mother, all I could think was, I've never lost a child. I cannot judge her for how she deals with the loss of hers. So I'm going to extend her grace. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep calling her. I'm going to keep giving her updates on her great grandkids. I'm going to do all the things because I've never lost a child. I have no idea. I could say this is what I would do. And this, I have no idea how I would feel other than I'm certain I would be in the room. That I could say for certain. So I think I had expectation that they would also want to uplift. And instead, it was just a replay of that week and constant barrage of questions to me about, what happened in this. And at one point, I, lost my temper and I was like, if you'd have been there, you'd know, but you weren't there. So, and I did. I had an expectation that they would be there because I couldn't see a different way.
Did you ever feel like others' expectations of how you should grieve for your husband made it harder for you to grieve in your own way?
Yes. For me, I'm a fan of both and, right? You can be grieving and experiencing joy at the same time. We are not one-dimensional beings. We can experience multiple things at a time. So because I was grieving his loss, grieving for my children, right? This is my first time being a widow. It's my first time trying to raise kids who've lost a parent. My parents at the time were still alive. My mom has since passed. She passed last year. So I had no frame of reference for what does it feel like to lose a parent. And even if I do lose my parents, they're old, right? They've lived a full life. They have met their great grandchildren already. Not the same as being 15. And so, 15-year-olds are just, emotions and hormones and figuring out who they are, like losing her dad, who was a daily presence in her life. He was her sports coach. He took her to and from school every day. He, coached her, like all the things, right? He was the dad who did the hair and boo-booed the knee and held your hair while you're throwing up. Like he was super dad. So it was a huge loss. And so it's just so, it was hard for me to know how do I grieve all of these different things at the same time when people keep interjecting how they feel I should feel. Because there was lots of joyous things. My daughter was getting married, beautiful thing. We wanted to get the wedding had its issues with family members who expressed their grievances about Kevin during the wedding. Like, what are you doing? Why are you bringing this day? So there was just so many times and so many things that it was like, okay, I can't please all of you, or any of you. So I'm just going to do what I think is best, and you guys can live with it or not.
That actually leads me to my next question. Why did you even consider others' expectations when you were struggling to grieve yourself? Why didn't you just put yourself first?
Boy, is that a big conversation. So I want to say, eldest daughter syndrome, eldest daughter of immigrant family syndrome. There's a lot of expectations on the eldest daughter to be the caretaker, the quasi-matriarch, those kinds of things. And so I've always kind of been the go-to person, right? I'm the strong one. And I heard that so many times. Oh, if anybody can handle this, Cindy, it's you. You're so strong. Which, incidentally, I want to say, sidebar, hey, y'all, check on your strong friend. She needs some help. She's not going to ask for it, but she really, really needs it. So just show up and do something. Or just show up and sit there and hold space. Even if you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, sit there and hold space. Now, thankfully, I had a couple of amazing friends who did that. They just showed up. And sometimes they weren't doing a blessed thing other than sitting there while I bawled my freaking eyes out. And so I felt seen.
And you bring up a really good point. Sometimes all you have to really do is just show up and sit there and listen.
Yep. Because I really didn't know what I needed. And so I was trying to please a lot of people, right? Like, what did I post online? Did I talk about a new relationship because people got offended? Did I not? It was just a lot of balancing act for me because I also didn't know how I felt because I hadn't unpacked my own grief at that point. So it was just, there was a lot of compartmentalization and masking for me just so that I could get through the day.
But I still want to understand, why did you feel the need to please other people while you had just experienced this great loss? Like, why not just be like, you know what? This is so difficult for me right now. I need to deal with myself first.
I think I would call it a little bit of self-abandonment. I elevated the feelings of others over my own.
Why?
Because I felt like I needed to keep the peace, or I needed to understand where someone else was coming from and what did they need. So it was, for me, still being that, like, how can I help them? I'm the one broken, but I'm still wondering how I can help you. What can I do for you? How can I make you more comfortable with your grief so that you leave me alone? So I think at the time I almost felt it was easier, and it allowed me to not look at the things. It was, for me, my grief felt like a Pandora's box. I felt like if I opened that box, I would never get up off the floor, that I would probably perish there just from the level of pain of all kinds that I was feeling. And every time I looked at my kids, I was like, I don't have that option. I need to be here for them. And then for them, extended to, oh, okay, well, his brothers feel this way. Oh, well, his mom feels this way. Oh, well, his friends feel this way. Oh, some stranger who you went to high school with them, who I've never met, you feel this way. It was just, I felt like in a fishbowl, like eyeballs. Everybody was inspecting every move that I made. And so I felt it at the time, I felt it was easier to uphold the performance than it was to unpack my own crap and deal with it.
So it was a bit of a distraction.
Yeah.
How did you navigate their expectations, especially when there was internal tension? Because things did not align with your own needs.
At the time, I think I put my kids' needs first. So I always defaulted to, what did they need? What could I do for them? And then it was, okay, anybody else close enough who knew what was going on, okay, I'll defer to you as well. And then I always figured I could just go back and deal with my own stuff eventually, which I eventually did. And that was a very big switch, because I was like, you know what, screw all of you. I want to do what I want to do.
And Cindy will talk about how you dealt with it later on in the show. Is there anything else you want to say about how you navigated through this really difficult time? You've mentioned distractions. Was that basically it?
Yeah, it was a lot of workaholicing, if you will, in the times that my kids didn't need me. And compartmentalization is a for me, double-edged sword. It's a skill, because sometimes you need to compartmentalize so that you can handle a situation. But I took that to the extreme. I compartmentalized everything, every emotion in its own little box. And I used to joke that these are my radioactive barrels. And if any one of them starts to leak, the whole place is going up in smoke. And at some point, the whole place went up in smoke.
So you experienced a lot after the death of your husband. Besides dealing with judgment from people, you struggled with your own mental health, and eventually you had to quit your job. How and when were you finally able to properly grieve for your husband?
Okay, so let's see. I quit my job would have been like March of 2018. I think at that point, my mental health was on its own breaking point, so I just quit my job. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Eventually, I want to say like over that summer, I kind of had my own breaking point where I just couldn't, my little barrels started to leak. And it was obvious to me that I needed to do something or I was going to explode. And so that's when I sought like professional help to kind of parse through what I was feeling and try to let some of that go.
So that was about 6 months later?
Yeah, because he passed September. So I want to say it was almost a year because it would have been August of 2018 that I went and, got a therapist and started to do some work.
So it was a year after the death of your husband that you were finally able to sit down and deal with your emotions and how you truly grieved for your husband at that point after taking care of everyone else.
Yes, because my daughter had her regularly scheduled therapy sessions, her grief sessions, whatever modality. There was all kinds of modalities we went through with her. Got my oldest married off. Like basically I took care of all the things I felt were pressing. And then without having a full-time job, that opened up a lot of time in my day to be able to schedule my own things. While my daughter's at school or while she had practice or whatever, I could go and get my own sessions. I felt the building it was like a pressure cooker. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to snap at the smallest of things, which I know this thing is not the thing. So I need to go figure out, what's happening here. And my kids were really supportive because they kept saying, Mom, you have done everything for everyone. Go do something for you.
Take care of yourself.
Yes.
Cindy, do you believe that societal expectations can crush a person at a time when they're already barely holding themselves together?
Oh, hands down. Letting the expectations of others guide my life was something that I was well practiced at. So it wasn't like when Kevin passed, this was a new habit, right? It just shone a light so bright on it that I could no longer participate in this behavior. And so nowadays I have lots of different tools and I've done so much work that if someone even expresses an expectation or is mad about an unspoken expectation, I'm like, you miss me with that. It doesn't, I'm just, nope. I do what I want, when I want. I'm not, weighed down like I used to be, but there was definitely an inflection point.
Is there anything you wish you had done differently for the sake of your mental health?
My gut answer is probably no, because I feel like everything unfolds as it should, right? But, that's a great question, right? If you could go back to another time with the knowledge that you had today, I would do a lot of things differently. But it wouldn't just be around Kevin's death. It would have been years before that. Because if I, understanding the pattern now that I didn't understand then, I can trace multiple experiences in my life to allowing the expectations of others to dictate what I was going to do, even if it didn't align with my spirit. So now I learn to align with my spirit. So I probably, in this particular instance, I probably would have sought help sooner rather than later, instead of just, doing the grit and bear thing and just, loading and loading and loading until I could no longer hold the weight of it. I don't think that was a healthy choice, but it was the only one I made at the time. So I've also learned not to beat up prior versions of Cindy for the choices she made, because she did the best she could with what she had at the time.
That's really good, Cindy. That's awesome.
Thank you.
What would you say to someone, whether they're grieving or not, who is struggling to meet others' expectations that don't align with their own?
I guess I would say that firstly is to get very clear on what your own expectations are for your own life, for your own person, and to ensure that those expectations actually belong to you. Because a lot of times that voice is someone else's. And, as I did my unpacking work, and I believe personal development is ongoing, right? I don't think anybody's ever just fixed or cured, because you're living in the world and you're kind of re-traumatized in lots of different ways for different things. So for me, it's a continual check-in over, is this mine or is this someone else's? Where have I heard this before? Is this my mom's expectation? Did my grandma say something to me? Was it my third grade teacher who told me something, when I was 8 years old, and I internalized that because I didn't know better, and now I'm living a life based on that. So it's always like a deep check-in. Who does this belong to? And if it belongs to me, okay, well then I need to explore it and make sure I'm moving. Are the decisions I'm making in line with me moving towards that direction? If the expectation does not belong to me, then I can lovingly give it back, right? Because, we talk about boundaries and things, and boundaries are not electric fences for people to bounce off of. So we don't want to be doing that. I want to say, I appreciate your input and thank you, but it is unnecessary. And you may want to go figure out why you feel so strongly about what I'm doing, especially if what you're doing is harming no other individual, right? If I'm engaging in harmful behavior, I need my loved ones to call me in and not call me out, call me in. Because again, love, not electric fences, right? Let's talk about what's going on here. Because that's really how, in my opinion, you elicit change, right? Love always wins. That's my motto. And so do I have love for myself, right? Am I putting expectations? Am I elevating other people's needs above my own? And how can I stop doing that? How can I put my needs first? And, I think as a mom, as a first daughter, all the things, right? Even as a friend, as a granddaughter, you can get more down in, am I being selfish or am I being selfless? And I've come to learn that if I don't do me first, I can't do you. I can't do you justice. I might be band-aiding something for you, but I really can't help you. I need to model good self-care and show you that, hey, taking care of what you need, if your body is screaming for something, if your mind is screaming for help, you get the help. And you just lovingly tell other people, I can't right now. And so I think one tip that I would give folks is, for me, what I learned in my years of working on myself was a good question to ask is, of the person who you want to vent to or put an expectation on, because that's what it is at the end of the day. Do you have the capacity right now? Because you give the other person an out. And it might be that not that they don't want to help you, they might not have the capacity, because maybe they are the strong friend who's carrying, their own radioactive barrels, and you dumping on them in this moment makes one of those things spring free. It's not even about what you said. It was they didn't have capacity. So for me, that's something I've learned. Ask people whether or not they have the capacity to deal. And I also ask people whether or not they're interested in what I have to say. Because unsolicited opinions can be really crappy, because that's what I don't want to deal with unsolicited opinions.
That's really sound advice. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to say in regards to grieving and expectations?
I think, one, that grief doesn't happen in isolation, right? And you're not a one-dimensional human being. You can both have grief and joy and happiness and love and laughter and everything at the same time, right? I think there was a line in one of my favorite movies, Steel Magnolias, and the actress says, laughter through tears is my favorite emotion. And I think from a grieving perspective, that is helpful, because there's going to be a lot of tears. But the ability to see through the clouds and laugh on the other side is my favorite emotion.
Do you feel that now when you look back, that you feel good about everything you did do for your husband?
I do, yes. And, my goal was to keep his memory alive, and that's still the case. I now have grandkids that I didn't have when he was alive. My granddaughter's 6 and my grandson is 4, and they know who Grandpa Kevin is and was. And that is my goal, to ensure that if his name is brought up, they're not like, who or what? And so that was, and for my, my children that we talk about, and we've had remembrance ceremonies and all the things. And that's my goal, to remember him in love. And when I do share about him on the anniversary of his death or on his birthday, I share pictures of how I remember him, how I want to always remember him, and tell a funny story about something that he did.
You know, what's amazing about your story is, even though you did go through a very difficult time during that period when your husband passed away, you came out stronger. You've learned so much. And today you're sitting across me and you're telling me you feel very satisfied and happy with your actions. And what more can you ask from yourself?
I mean, realistically, I can't, right? It all turned out, I guess, as best as it could. And I don't have regrets over what I did, because I think, when you're surviving, you have a certain set of behaviors and expectations for yourself. And when you're thriving, those behaviors and expectations are very different. So from a place of thriving, I cannot look back and judge my place of surviving. So I just look back with love and grace and say, previous Cindy, man, she did the best she could.
As Cindy mentioned, grief is a personal journey, and I agree. How one grieves and mourns the death of a loved one will differ from person to person. However, when culture and societal expectations conflict with your own, what should you do? It's tricky. I really believe it's important to give people the space and time to process a loss in their own way, rather than pointing out what they're doing wrong. A little more understanding and kindness during such a difficult time can go a long way. What do you think? You can let us know by leaving a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or by reaching out on our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor, share the X Perspective podcast with a friend. It really helps us reach more listeners. My listeners, thank you for your time and attention. But before you go, I have one last question. Have you visited our website yet? You'll find us at thexperspectivepodcast.com. It was built specifically for us by an awesome company called Stegadon Software. They help small businesses level up with sleek, modern websites and custom apps without any tech headaches. They got our website up and running in no time, and were very attentive to all our needs and concerns. If you're curious about what they can do for you, mention the X Perspective podcast and you'll get a free consultation. Check them out at stegadonsoftware.com. That's STEGODON software.com. Stegadon Software. Smart software, fewer obstacles. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you in episode 19.